Set up. It's 10 a.m. Pacific, Saturday, Halloween. Who's ready for this? All right, we're so excited for this panel. Misha and I have been talking about this panel for quite a bit because when we found Maniac pumpkin carvers, we were blown away. So what you're getting today is best in class pumpkin carving tips and tricks, a little bit of the history of pumpkin carving. You're getting classic pumpkin carving. We're just so excited. So I want to introduce you to a gentleman who's the co-founder of Maniac Pumpkin Carvers. He and his partner have been working together here creatively for over 20 years, making cool stuff. They're artists, and when they found the medium of pumpkin, something happened, something changed. They essentially mastered Halloween, and they've been on every TV show you can think of, from Ellen to The Chew to Martha. Listen, these guys are the elite of pumpkin carving, and I'm really excited to bring Marc in here. Let me grab Marc. Marc, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm well. It's a little spooky behind me, not gonna lie. But I can't imagine how much must be going on for you right now with the season that we're in right now. How have you slept at all?
It's been a few weeks since I've gotten a good night's sleep. It's typical Halloween time. We grind around the clock to make sure that we bring as many pumpkins to people as we can.
Yeah. Well, I'm so thankful for your time. I know Misha is too, and Gishers. I'm excited for you to dive in. I don't want to take up too much time me talking. I want you to be able to have the time to go through all of this with us, to give us some insight into classic pumpkin carving. We also have at the end of this, as everyone knows, hold on, we're seeing some issues with Berto not being seen here. So let me just make sure we're fixed on that. Can everybody see Berto? If you can see Berto, raise your hand. Excellent. Perfect. Okay. Great. So I'm gonna let you take it away. We're gonna be giving out that Zoom live stream challenge item here at the end. So get as much information as you can from Marc. Marc, take it away.
Right on. Here we go. I'm going to share my screen with everybody and give you guys a little history of pumpkin carving. So I'm Marc from Maniac Pumpkin Carvers. This is a photo of me and my partner, Chris. We started Maniac Pumpkins in 2008. We'd been carving pumpkins for several years before that, actually since we were kids. But in 2008, it was kind of a game changer. We got some press and publicity and things started taking off. But let's start at the beginning. Pumpkin carving really begins with Halloween. Many people know Halloween is it's an American holiday typically. And Halloween is typically an American holiday, but it draws on some very ancient traditions. And, festivals that celebrate the end of the harvest season. Hold on one second. Can you guys see our interpreter now? Or not anymore? Let me know in the chat if you can see the interpreter. Okay, great. Awesome. Glad we got that fixed. So Halloween is an American holiday, but it draws on some very ancient traditions. Various holiday celebrations that, the Celtic Samhain, the Roman Pomona, these were celebrations that signaled the end of the harvest season. And it was a time when people thought that maybe the veil between worlds was thinner and spirits would roam the earth. So the traditions of wearing costumes or masks really came from people wanting to disguise themselves from the spirits, or maybe even try and scare them away. And of course, jack-o'-lanterns are very iconic, a major part of Halloween. But the jack-o'-lantern actually, it didn't start originally with the pumpkin. The term was from a natural phenomenon originally. Glowing gases that would appear over bogs and swamps, marshes, would they would collect in the air and glow, and people would see them and not be sure of the science behind it. So they would come up with stories about why there were these glowing lights. And there was a tale about a trickster named Jack. Like many tricksters, this Jack, he he got in trouble for tricking too many people. Tricked he tricked God and got barred from heaven. He tricked the devil and was told he couldn't enter hell. And so he was forced to roam the earth. And the one consolation, they tossed him a glowing ember, an enchanted coal, and he didn't have anywhere to put it. So he found a turnip on the ground, scooped it out, put the coal in there, and carried it to light his way as he roamed the earth till the end of time. And so people would see these glowing lights and refer to them as, oh, there's the Jack of the Lantern, Jack with his lantern. And children started, carving out their own turnips to honor Jack of Lantern. And, so the original jack-o'-lanterns were actually these super creepy turnips and beets and potatoes, different root vegetables that people had access to. It wasn't until the Irish, really started coming over to the United States in the early 1800s after the potato famine that they were introduced to the pumpkin by the Native Americans. And pumpkins were easy to grow. They were high in vitamins, super nutritious, a staple crop. And, this really helped people survive. And so word started getting back to Europe, and, you have all sorts of fairy tales and fables starting to include pumpkins, Cinderella's carriage, so many different stories start including the pumpkin, Sleepy Hollow, the headless horseman. And children in the United States started carrying on their tradition of carving jack-o'-lanterns, but now they're using pumpkins to carve faces. And they really started with treating it as a prank. So they would carve a face into a pumpkin and set it out, in the evenings, and they would light it up with a candle inside and try and scare people. And so, the tradition caught on. It was originally a prank, but then it became very fashionable. And so, the magazines and newspapers of the day, they would teach people how to carve their own jack-o'-lanterns, just like today. And these are examples of some old vintage Halloween postcards that had gorgeous pumpkin artwork, and they were really popular, sent to friends and family. And just like today, Halloween's big business. They had decorations everywhere. The same kind of iconography that's carried down through the ages, the witches and black cats and scarecrows. And, many children over time started to carve pumpkins. Here's some photos of me and some of my teammates at Maniac Pumpkin Carvers with some of our early pumpkins. And, in time, we took those classic nostalgic traditions and, developed our own style. And we really started pushing the boundaries of what was possible with pumpkin carving. And, that's what started getting us some attention. Food Network and, the Yankees were one of our first major clients. And then it started escalating. We started getting requests for more and more detailed work and started carving, realistic portraiture and all sorts of characters, and eventually started even elevating it to creating works of art. And this is something that got us really excited because we're artists, so we go to museums, we study the masterpieces, and we get inspired by the great, patron saints of the arts. And so if you go to a museum, you'll often see artists with sketchbooks or even an easel set up trying to capture, all the subtleties of a favorite painting. We like to try and reinterpret our favorites in pumpkin. And so, it causes us to really level up our skills each time we do one of these. And it also gives us a much deeper appreciation for the original artist and their work. And these are actually examples of pumpkins that we carved for the Museum of Modern Art in New York City, based on paintings in their permanent collection or that were on special exhibition around the time of Halloween. Here's a few more of our favorite artist series pumpkins that we've done. And, we do a lot of live demonstrations and events because pumpkin carving, it's an ephemeral art, meaning these things are very perishable. They don't last long. So we love getting out in person and carving for people and seeing the reactions on people's faces as they enjoy this experience. Because it's not going to last long. So it's something that you really have to be in the moment for, experience. And so, traveling around doing live events, we get to go to all different types of places. And one of our favorites was carving a Dollywood in the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee. And we got so inspired by the flora and fauna there. And here you could actually see another style of carving. The previous ones were what we call our etching style, where we take a light bulb and we, oh, Berto has disappeared. I'm sorry. I'm not sure how to get
No,
Berto.
we've gotten him back. I think somebody had
Okay.
clicked your face and kept it on you.
Oh, okay. So I'll keep going. Let us know if you have any other issues. So there's another style of pumpkin carving here. I've been showing some of what we call our etching style. And for those, every scratch and scrape into the surface of the pumpkin gets illuminated when we put a really bright light inside. But our sculpted style, we use the thickness of the pumpkin, the rind, and almost treat the pumpkin like a block of wood or stone, chipping and chiseling and scraping away, revealing a form within the pumpkin. And here's a few more examples of sculpted pumpkins that we've done over the years. And one thing that I love about these is that we're really looking for big, heavy pumpkins that have a thick rind. So that way, when we have a protruding nose or ears that stick out on top, we really we're not adding anything on, we're subtracting. So we're carving away material and removing a lot of that pumpkin rind to make it look like something is protruding out. And every year, the people that grow our pumpkins grow them bigger and bigger, and they break world records almost every year. These are some examples of giant pumpkins that we've done. Pumpkins over 1,000 pounds. The one on the right here was actually 1,911 pounds. That's our biggest one to date. And a few years ago, that would have been like a world record holder. But now the largest pumpkin now is up around 2,500 pounds. And I want to say that we do all of these different types of styles and super intricate work, but we also still have a deep appreciation and love for classic jack-o'-lanterns. There's something really beautiful and wonderful about the simplicity and minimalism, taking fundamental classic shapes, triangles, squares, circles, combining them in different ways, at different sizes, different scales, and creating a whole range of emotions and personality to the pumpkins. And we also do other types of jack-o'-lanterns, more advanced, more intricate designs, and we even like to paint on pumpkins. And sometimes we'll include seasonal produce or other items, and just really encouraging creative play. But that brings us to a blank slate. I'm not sure what I'm going to carve today. But I think I've got a pumpkin over here, and I think I'm going to give you guys some tips and tricks for creating your own classic jack-o'-lanterns. When I do my jack-o'-lanterns, sometimes I like to start with just looking at the size or shape pumpkin that I have and see if the shape of it kind of calls out to me and inspires a type of expression or emotion. Other times, I'll just think about what type of emotion, maybe what I'm feeling or what I want to portray. And I'll take some paper and just really start roughly sketching out some ideas. So, these, whenever you do any carving, you don't want to just go right in with a knife, kind of stabbing at your pumpkin. It's really best to start with a little paper, grab a pen, and just scribble. It's like I will just doodle out ideas. Like I'll make some triangles and I'll see maybe the eyes are looking this way, and maybe there's a little nose and a big toothy grin, or maybe I do like angrier looking eyes that are upside down and eyeballs this way. You just kind of play. But I'm gonna take my pumpkin and I'm gonna sketch out something really quick. You could even do like big moon shaped eyes. Those are fun. They have a lot of expression. So you draw that out, and maybe I want to do like some detail in the eye too. Something like this. and a triangle nose, very classic. And I feel like this guy is like surprised, maybe. He's gasping. Maybe he's got some fangs in here. And so now, you know, when I do the classics, I like to sketch something out really quick and loose. And then I go in with a saw. And, you know, I've got like fancier blades, but I also have like, you know, the cheapo plastic ones. They're all good. I see some questions coming in. What's a good marker or pen to draw your sketch? So I can actually show you with another camera here really quick. So I drew this out with just a regular pen. That's why it's a little hard to see. But, you know, you could use a Sharpie. You could use a ballpoint pen. It doesn't really matter. There's a great trick for getting the ink off. So a classic like green scrubby kitchen sponge will take the ink off without much pressure. You just gently rub it and it'll kind of buff the ink right off. But I'm going to show you guys, I'm going to grab a classic carving knife and I'm going to carve. So there's a little bit of an order to things when you carve a classic jack-o'-lantern. If you have any kind of detail, you want to start with the more detailed areas first. So I'm going to do this inner eye section first and work my way around here. And you want the blade to go straight in and straight out for the most part. And so now I'm going to do the other inner eye area. And the way that you want to work is always the inner details, then the outer details, and typically from the center towards the outside of the pumpkin. But so now I've got my inner kind of pupil. Now I'll go around the iris, and then I'll create the eyeball. And working in this kind of order of going from the inner to the outer helps kind of maintain the structural strength of whatever you're carving. You don't want to put pressure on a weak point by carving away a big area and then trying to do little detailed areas. So that pops out real nice like that. And now we go in like this. And, you know, these saws are great, but they're kind of a one trick deal. So I like to use some other tools to really like enhance my carving sometimes. And, you know, when we do the etchings, the tools that we're using for those are things like linoleum cutters and wood carving tools. And I'll show you what those look like in just 1 second. You know, this is a classic linoleum cutting tool. These are used in printmaking, and you can get really detailed with these. You know, you can use them to like just etch into the surface of the skin. And if you have a bright light in there, you can really allow a lot of light to shine through. This is one of my clay sculpting tools, but I can use it to really just scrape into the surface of the pumpkin and get like, you know, really nice effects like that too. And, you know, maybe I use this to scrape away where the teeth are here. And then I might even go and carve around these teeth, and it's going to look a lot more realistic than if I had just did the teeth as skin. You know, it gives another level of contrast and detail. So now I can kind of create my mouth going around. And, you know, jack-o'-lanterns, it's fun to just play and experiment with different types of faces, different emotions. You know, that pops out really quick like that. You can take one of these sculpting tools and even add more details, like maybe there's some bags under his eyes or some tears, you know, smile lines. And for the sculpted pumpkins, we use these all day. These are such a great versatile tool to do all kinds of work. And you can really go around and just embellish. There's a lot of ways to do this. And then, you know, I always make sure that I take my scrubby sponge and remove any ink at the end. Just a little gentle polishing takes the ink off, because I don't want ink in my final pictures. I want it to look really clean and beautiful. And I'm just going to check some questions that are coming in. I see, can you use a kitchen knife to carve or Exacto knives? When I first started carving, that's all I had. I used kitchen knives. I used Exacto knives. I used like the retractable craft knives. What It's great to use things that you have around. You know, I love taking things from the kitchen or from the toolbox. Like this is a Melon Baller. I could use this to make, you know, other types of eyeballs. Like I could scoop out a big circle and now I've got, you know, an eyeball ready to plug back in, and or maybe that's a wart, you know, it could be all different kinds of things. Maybe he got hit in the head with something. He's got a big bump on his head. I like taking things like lemon zesters that I can use for, you know, maybe making some texture of hair. This makes great fur. You know, you can really just have fun playing with items around the house. For more difficult designs, should you use a nail first? So I think what you're asking is if there's a if you like to use, if I like to use a transfer method where you poke holes through the design, and that's not one of my favorite methods. I mean, I'm an artist, so I freehand a lot of designs onto the pumpkin, but you could also get carbon paper. It's a really cheap, easy method for transferring designs. Carbon paper is that old school way of making copies where you take a sheet of black carbon paper. I think I have one over here. The carbon paper looks like this. So you would put it shiny side down facing the pumpkin and tape it on. And then you would take a design, tape it over, and you would just trace with a pen. And it'll make a copy of the drawing right onto the pumpkin. I think that's the quickest method of transferring and much better than tediously making pinholes around the design and then trying to connect the dots. I see another question coming in. My biggest question is about how to pick a good pumpkin that will last through carving longer than a day. Whenever we buy pumpkins, they're either soft by the time we carve or rot a day or two after carving. So pumpkins are really perishable. You want to look for pumpkins that are fresh, and fresh to us means seeing that they're you know, not bruised or blemished on the skin. They shouldn't have mushy spots when you're buying them. A great indicator of the freshness of your pumpkin is the stem. So if you see pumpkins without a stem, those are old. They've been manhandled. The greener the stem, the fresher the pumpkin is. When pumpkins are grown, they actually all start green. They grow on vines. When they're cut from the vine and sit in the sun, they start to ripen and turn orange. So a green vine is a pumpkin that was freshly cut, a green stem rather. When you see those really dry, brittle brown stems, that pumpkin's gonna be a little drier inside. It's probably gonna last, you know, a shorter amount of time. But all pumpkins are subject to, you know, the variables of temperature, humidity. The best thing is cold weather. If you have cold temperature, if you could refrigerate your pumpkin even, it will last a little bit longer. But for classic jack-o'-lanterns, we expect them to last, you know, a few days, a week tops. The etching designs and the sculpted designs actually last a little bit longer. We typically can get a week out of them, but even those look their best for the first 3 or 4 days. And you know, for jack-o'-lanterns, you always want to hollow it out first. For the etchings and the sculpted designs, you don't necessarily have to hollow them out. Sometimes we hollow it out just before we're going to pop a light inside. Another question is coming in: does the temperature of the pumpkin matter, cold or room temp? The colder the better. Definitely the colder the better. What's my favorite pumpkin I've ever carved? You know, it's like picking a favorite child. It's so I love them all. Whichever one I'm working on, I get really into the flow, and it is, you know, it's a very meditative state that I get into when I'm carving. And you know, we might spend 8 hours working on one pumpkin. So whichever one I'm working on often is my favorite at the time. But some of those artist series ones, those really are many of my favorites. It's I don't know. You got to love the process to really do it to a high level. Another question coming in. This may be dumb, but what age is it safe to let kids help with the carving? So that really, it varies depending on the kids. My kids are still pretty young. They love getting their hands dirty, scooping out and pulling out all the guts, and then we give them tons of crafting supplies. So they'll, paint on the pumpkins while we're carving. They'll do all kinds of stickers and things like that. Um, you know, I've seen 7 and 8 year olds who can carve like a pro, and I've seen 60-year-olds who shouldn't be holding a knife. So you never know. It's a tough one. You got to use discretion and just make sure everybody stays safe. Another great question: is a serrated blade preferred for traditional carving more than a straight edge knife? So for jack-o'-lanterns, I like a thin blade, a saw. Whether it's like a cheapo one like these, they'll get the jobs done. But I do like that thin serrated saw blade, as opposed to like a kitchen knife. You can use it if that's all you have, but you're not gonna get those clean cuts, and you're not gonna be able to make turns as easily. So you're gonna want to stick to more straight edges. Like if you only have a steak knife or a kitchen knife, go for the classic triangles and squares and clean straight edges. You're gonna get frustrated trying to do round curving shapes. Um, One more great question coming in: the best way to open the pumpkin, at the top by the stem or from the back? So I feel like you're a mind reader, Michelle. Um, we talk a lot about the way to open a pumpkin because the traditional jack-o'-lantern gets opened at the top, but we often don't do this because we like keeping the structural integrity of the pumpkin. So we do typically make windows in the back of the pumpkin. And that way, you have an unbroken seam on top. And as the pumpkin starts to age and maybe wilt a little bit, it still has that structural strength holding it together. And you can even, that back window, you want to make it a clean cut so that way it fits back in nicely. But sometimes, as things change shape over a few days, you could just add like a staple or some tape, even like a pin you could stick in, whatever it takes to hold that piece back in place. It's fine. Do you look for certain types of pumpkins to ensure a thinner wall? I have so much trouble carving because the pumpkin walls are always so thick. So I prefer thick pumpkins. For the types of work that I do, I need thick typically more than thin. The sculpted pumpkins, the etched pumpkins, they benefit from thick. And that way I can control the amount of light that I let through, like especially with the etching. I will start with a thick pumpkin, and that way I can put a bright light inside and really control how much light passes through and thin it out exactly how I need. With jack-o'-lanterns, you want a thinner wall. It'll make the carving go a little easier, but you can, you just get in there and use some strength and scrape until it's thin enough. We don't really have an exact thickness. A half inch is pretty good. Um, would something like a pie pumpkin be better for the sculpted style? Pie pumpkins could, I've sculpted them. They're good, but they're also great for eating. There's you can really sculpt with any type of gourd. They're all fun. Butternut squashes are awesome for sculpting because they have a very small cavity in the center. What type of light do you use for the pumpkin? I actually, for the etching style, I like to use a really bright bulb, like a 40-watt bulb, or even tea lights or not tea lights, I'm sorry, tea lights we use in the jack-o'-lanterns. But for the etchings, I'll use either a 40-watt bulb, sometimes a 60-watt bulb, and wire it up like a lamp. Or I'll get like a really powerful battery-powered work light and stick that in, a bright flashlight. You want a lot of brightness for the etchings. One more question. So those cheap pumpkin carving kits they sell aren't good, right? They always seem to break after one use. They're cheap, so they're not gonna last forever. But I mean, I've been doing many pumpkins with these, and these are the cheapo ones. I have durable ones that are pricier and sturdier, but I still use the cheap ones constantly. And as long as you keep the saws going straight in and out rather than moving side to, like you don't want to bend side to side. That's when they bend and snap. List of tools I recommend. My top favorites are linoleum cutter, clay loops, some cheapo carving saws, and my favorite is the cheap plastic scoop. The kits that come with these like big metal serrated scoops, those chew up the pumpkins too much. I can control exactly how much I take off with a little plastic scoop like this. And if I don't have one of these, I actually like using like the spoon part of like a serving spoon with the handle taken off. Maybe one more question, and then I think let's see. Oh, there's so many good questions coming in. Where can you get carbon paper? Any office supply store has it, or any art supply store will sell it, and they will call it transfer paper. How do you know how thin to etch so you get the red glow while still maintaining the integrity? Experiment, trial and error. You got to play with it. And can you use the same techniques with a watermelon? Yeah, we carve watermelons. The texture is very different. The skin is much harder to get through, and then the flesh is much softer and wetter. So it makes a mess, but they're fun. And I've never carved a pumpkin before. What's the biggest first time mistake I can avoid? Biggest first time mistake that I think people make is that they go right in with a knife. Have a plan, make a sketch first. It doesn't have to be a masterpiece drawing. Just, doodle some ideas and then you'll be ready to go. Charlie, I think we answered a ton of questions. These have been
You
amazing.
did. Awesome. Well, thank you so much.
What's our challenge?
Okay, our challenge. Let's get to our challenge. So I'm gonna read it out first, and I'm gonna put it up on the screen so that we have time to interpret it. But not everyone knows this, but the Renaissance masters were brilliant jack-o'-lantern carvers. Caravaggio. Carve a Renaissance painting or sculpture from a pumpkin, gourd, turnip, or other carvable fruits or vegetables. Note, you may not use the Mona Lisa. Bonus points for a successful backlit jack-o'-lantern of the ecstasy of St. Teresa. just to change it up. So I'm going to put this on the screen now so everyone can see it. Let me I'm going to spotlight. I'm telling you, Zoom has been having some issues with their windowing. So where the windows go, they made some updates, and I think they're still working out bugs. Hopefully you can see Berto here. This is your challenge. We're going to put that up in the list right now. So please go and check the list. And, make sure and tag these guys, tag. I think, Marc, you probably want to see all the Caravaggio's.
I would love to see everybody's work. Please tag us at Maniac Pumpkins, and we love seeing everybody's carvings.
Yeah, so you can follow them. Please go to their website, maniacpumpkincarvers.com. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Go check out their website. They have classes. They have lots of cool stuff to see. Follow them on social media. I'm obsessed. I just saw them do another live stream a couple of days ago and got to see some more techniques. So Marc, thanks so much for being here. Let me just get us back so that we're all on screen together again. I swear Zoom has come a long way. I'm sure they're very under the gun, but there's still a lot they need to fix. Thank you, Marc. Thank you for your time. I'm so excited. I actually have a pumpkin right here. I'm gonna get carving. It has a stem. So
that looks like a great pumpkin to carve. That smooth surface, you can get a lot of detail in there, and it's going to be great.
There's a giant spider on it. I don't know if you can see that, but there's a giant spider, and I'm going to put it down. Thank you, Marc.
Awesome. Thank you, Charlie.
Thanks a lot. Get some rest soon. Have a great Halloween. Berto, thank you. Everybody, go to the list. Go to the list, and you will find your challenge. So jump on it. Bye. Thank you, Marc.